The Iran war is now entering a potentially decisive phase, with the United States ramping up its military presence in the region. The U.S. Navy's amphibious assault ship, the USS Tripoli, is now moving towards West Asia, carrying nearly 2,200 Marines trained for combat, raids and amphibious operations. Satellite imagery places the warship in the South Indian Ocean, signaling a sharp escalation as the conflict enters its fourth week today. At the center is Washington's strategy in Kharg Island, Iran's economic lifeline, handling nearly 90% of its oil exports, and that is what US is eyeing. US is eyeing Kharg Island as of today. Reports suggest that US is considering options to either blockade or even seize the island to pressure Tehran and secure the Strait of Hormuz. While Donald Trump maintains that no ground troops are being deployed, Benjamin Netanyahu has hinted that airstrikes alone may not be enough, exposing a strategic divergence between the two countries.
We can create the conditions, but they have to, they have to exploit those conditions at a certain point. It is often said that you can't do revolutions from the air. That is true. You can't do it only from the air. You can do a lot of things from the air, and we're doing, but there has to be a ground component as well. There are many possibilities for this ground component, and I take the liberty of not sharing with you all those possibilities.
No, I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you. Iran is a serious threat to the world, to the Middle East and to the world. And everybody agrees with me. I think virtually every country agrees with me on that. So I wanted to put out that fire. And I said, if I do that, oil prices will go up, the economy will go down a little bit. I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
And now, raising the stakes further, the US is also deploying USS Boxer, a powerful warship often described as a mini aircraft carrier designed for tri-phibious warfare. USS Boxer can launch coordinated operations across the sea, land and air, carrying nearly 2,000 Marines, fighter jets and Osprey aircraft, as well as attack helicopters. And with its advanced strike capability, rapid deployment power, the arrival of USS Boxer signals that the conflict could be entering a far more intense and expanded phase.
Israel and Iran traded strikes on Saturday as President Donald Trump said the US was considering winding down its military operation against Iran, adding that it was close to meeting its military goals. Washington has sent mixed messages about the conflict, having in the last 24 hours also confirmed it was sending thousands more Marines to the Middle East. Trump said he thought Israel would be ready to end the war when the US does, but rejected the idea of a ceasefire.
I don't want to do a ceasefire. You don't do a ceasefire when you're literally obliterating the other side.
As the war on Iran entered its fourth week, Israel also attacked Beirut, saying it was targeting the Iran-backed Hezbollah. Israel stepped up airstrikes targeting the militia in the deadliest spillover from the Middle East conflict since Hezbollah, in support of Iran, fired on Israel on March the 2nd. More than 2,000 people have been killed since the US and Israel attacked Iran on February the 28th. Americans appear increasingly concerned at signs the war could expand further. 3 US officials told Reuters on Friday that 2,500 Marines, along with an amphibious assault ship and accompanying warships, would deploy to the region. However, the officials did not say what their role would be. Vital energy infrastructure in Iran and neighbouring Gulf states has been attacked over the 3 weeks of war. It sent oil prices up 50% and threatened global economic shock. The Strait of Hormuz, which around a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas supplies pass through, has also been effectively closed to most shipping. Meanwhile, the president has criticised allies for refusing to help open the strait.
NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so, and others could help us.
Some allies in Europe, as well as Canada and Japan, have pledged to join appropriate efforts, but others, like Germany and France, have spelled out that fighting must stop before they aid in opening the strait. Washington, in an attempt to combat soaring prices and increase supply, on Friday waived sanctions on the purchase of Iranian oil at sea for 30 days.
All right, that is as far as war in West Asia is concerned. Where exactly is it headed, and what do you make of it, with Donald Trump suggesting that it could potentially mean that we have ensured that US's objectives are met in the Middle East? We're going to wind down the war, but at the same time sending amphibious assault ships, including USS Tripoli. Joining me on the show is General S.B. Asthana. He's a defense and strategic expert. Also with me is Nirmal Abraham, political analyst and a US expert. Thank you very much, the two of you. General Asthana, I want to come to you first. Looking at all that has transpired in the 24 hours, we are looking at polar opposite statements coming from Donald Trump. On one hand, he says that we are winding down operations and we've met majority of our target. On the other hand, he's sending a buffer up as far as, not just in terms of military options, but also ensuring that he sends Marines on ground, something that he hasn't done so far. It's been 3 weeks of the war, and suddenly we're looking at the war now entering its next phase, which is likely to be more intensive if there are boots on ground.
Certainly, I must tell you that US and Israel started this war, so initiative is with them. The escalation dynamics will play as per how much they want to escalate. As far as Trump is concerned, he does not have a clear-cut end state in mind, and that is why the confusing signals. On one hand, as you rightly mentioned, he's looking at winding down earlier, my strategic objectives have been met, etc., etc. And on the other side, he's also building up Marines. At the same time, he has also started targeting Natan's nuclear base. So these are mixed signals. Now, problem is that he is actually stuck with certain options. If, let me just analyze the pros and cons of both. If he has to pull back, let's take the first part, that he wants to wind down, and his objectives have been met. Out of all his important objectives, his strategic political objective of regime change has not been met. His military objectives of degradation have been met. His idea of an open Hormuz is not there. That has not been met. Hormuz is still being interdicted. The dominance of Israel of Iranis is still there, and they still have the capability of missile. So they've not been obliterated to an extent that today they have demonstrated a capability to exceed more than 2,000 kilometers by hitting at Diego Garcia, whether successful or otherwise. So he would have to pull back in case he does that, with half the objectives fulfilled, with regime still intact, with not many objectives met, and therefore Iran will also claim victory to say that they have survived the regime. And this is a recipe for a future war again, because the new hierarchy of Iran will look at making the nuclear bomb with much more enthusiasm. So this is the drawback of pulling back. Now coming on to boots on ground. See, boots on ground is not easy, that he also knows. The fact is that Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq, and the terrain friction is tremendously difficult. And therefore, boots on ground is going to amount to very heavy casualties, which American people are not ready to accept. So this part is known to him. Now, when he is sending Marines, basically he is trying to put pressure on Iran to ease out the Strait of Hormuz. The Marines may be employed, maybe that he becomes over enthusiastic and he employs them either on the coast of Strait of Hormuz or in trying to secure the island. So these are the two options. Now, in both cases, let's take it, let's be quite clear and grant the Iranian side that they are also a military force.
Absolutely.
And they have also, they will not be surprised. They have calculated it now, and therefore there are possibilities of casualties there. So I think.
But I'm sure, General, there are possibilities of casualties on both sides if there were to be on troops on ground, which will only.
So blockade. My last point. So blockade is blockade could also be one of the options, and keeping the threat real, keeping the threat of ground boots on ground real, to pressurize Iran to perhaps ease out on Strait of Hormuz.
All
Back,
right, all
back to
right.
you.
This blockade strategy, Nirmal Abraham, is it likely to work on Iran? Because so far, it's been a war of equals if one were to look at it from the outside, if not militarily, but at least when it comes to aggression. Neither has Iran bowed down, nor has Iran conceded to defeat just as yet, which means Iran is fighting no matter how many people at the top of military, commandership die in the war so far. Despite everything that Iran has lost militarily, as far as its leadership is concerned, it's coming out to be a formidable player.
It is, and I think it will continue to fight because they've already warned that if US puts hands on the Kharg Island, they will go absolutely bonkers on the neighbors, is what they've already warned us, which means Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, you name it, all the Gulf nations would be under threat. The peace of mind of the citizens would be under threat, and the economies of these countries would also be under threat. So I would say that at this point of time, the decision to bring in Marines, I agree with the Major General. It could be a negotiation ship, as Trump always does. He's trying to pressurize Iran onto freeing the Strait of Hormuz. But if it doesn't work, and if he has to go ahead with this plan, that means that it risks not only the lives of his Marines or his ground troops, which I believe by many estimates is around 4,000 to 5,000 ground troops and nearly 2,000 Marines. It also risks the lives of the people living there. I mean, we might think that it's just an oil refinery. No, it's not. There are about 10,000 people living in the island, Iranians. Their lives could be at risk. The lives of Marines that Trump sends there would be at risk. The lives of the ground troops would be at risk. The economies of the Gulf countries would be at risk. The peace of mind of those citizens would be at risk. Global oil prices would be at risk, and his presidency itself would be at risk, at least in terms of the midterm elections that are coming up in November of 2026. So I think on paper, it might look like a good strategy, but judging from how Iran has responded to each of Israel's and America's threats, we might only end up seeing more damage to the region as well as to the world and the economies.
All right, and I don't think any economy is prepared for that. Gentlemen, stay with us. In fact, looking into the latest updates coming in, the US is also now reportedly planning to deploy 3 more warships and thousands of additional troops to West Asia as tensions with Iran continue to surge. At the center of the strategy is a high-risk option. Washington is reportedly considering a blockade or even occupation of Kharg Island, Iran's most critical oil export hub, which handles nearly 90% of its crude shipments. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has sharply criticized NATO allies, calling them cowards for refusing to help secure the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global oil route. Trump has also ruled out a ceasefire with Iran, saying that US currently has the upper hand, even as he has hinted at possible plans to scale down operations. So when asked about US plans for Kharg Island, he refused to disclose anything, saying, "I can't tell you that." Take a look.
Well, look, we can have dialogue, but I don't want to do a ceasefire. You know, you don't do a ceasefire when you're literally obliterating the other side. They don't have a Navy. They don't have an Air Force. They don't have any equipment. They don't have any spotters. They don't have anti-aircraft. They don't have radar. And their leaders have all been killed at every level. We're not looking to do that. Thank you. Thank you.
And on the ground, the situation remains volatile as military activity intensifies. The Pentagon has already deployed about 2,200 strong Marine unit with more forces now on standby. But any move on Kharg Island carries serious risks. The small, heavily strategic island lies just off Iran's coast and would leave US troops exposed to missiles and drone attacks. The big question now is, how far will this conflict escalate, and at what cost to the global stability? That's the question we're asking here. Major General S.B. Asthana, of all the permutations, combinations that you've put out for our viewers right now, even if it's a threat by the US to, take over Kharg Island, if, for instance, US were to take over Kharg Island, if they were to put boots on the ground, what would that mean for the war?
See, putting boots on ground has got many other implications. First, let me talk of the mainland. Boots on ground on mainland requires a very solid ground logistic chain. They don't have that. They haven't prepared for it. So, boots on ground on main island on Iran is difficult. Now there are
And on
only two
Kharg Island
possibilities.
particularly?
Yeah. No, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
So there are only two possibilities. One is, as you said, Kharg Island, and second is the coastal areas of Strait of Hormuz to basically release to reduce the interdiction of the ships which are crossing Strait of Hormuz. Now, these are the two possibilities, but in both cases, especially in the case of shall I say, when we are looking at Strait of Hormuz, I'm sure Iranian military will also be deployed there, and they would be absolutely prepared for that as well. So it is going to face tremendous amount of casualties. As far as Kharg Island is concerned, while we may say that there are civilians there and oil facilities there, there is no way that Iranian military will not be there, and they would not have prepared any kind of defensive plan. They have been preparing for this war for years. The island will certainly have some kind of defensive plan already worked out,
Okay.
which therefore it is going to be a contested battle, and it's not going to be that the amphibious assault ships have gone and they've just landed like a demonstration. It won't happen that way. So therefore, they will have to wait and see. In my opinion, what is going to happen is that they may reach with all these, they may establish a blockade, and thereafter they may do another interdiction campaign in Kharg Island and see as to how Iran reacts to that, and then maybe perhaps take a chance in case they actually want to take a chance. In my opinion, as of now, you can take it as a very aggressive posturing exercise, but not really a full-blown intention to put boots on ground in Iran and fight a long battle in Iran. That is what is my take as far as this move is concerned.